sensational dime novels of the Civil War era. Like newspaper comics, pulp magazines enjoyed great popularity during the early decades of the 20th century. But, unlike the widely appealing comics, pulps often catered to more offbeat tastes. Most featured action, fantasy, adventure, and suspense tales, written by low-priced talent. Although some pulp writers, like Edgar Rice Burroughs, Raymond Chandler, and Ray Bradbury, went on to achieve great literary success and fame, they were the exceptions. Pulps delivered cheap thrills and made few intellectual demands on their authors and their audience. For 10 to 15 cents, readers could purchase one of as many as 250 pulp titles, available at newsstands each month. Titles like The Shadow, Captain Satan, Amazing Stories, and Startling Tales sometimes went to considerable lengths in their appeal to the sense of the lurid, sadistic, and grotesque. Existing alongside the well-documented 1930s market for best-selling novels like The Grapes of Wrath and Gone with the Wind was a less heralded audience for pulp magazine tales like Volunteer Corpse Brigade, Cult of the Living Carcass, and New Girls for Satan's Blood Ballet. The proliferation of such bizarre literature during the interwar years indicates that there existed a lucrative and mostly young market with tastes well outside of the mainstream. In January 1929, pulp fiction met the comics when the pulp heroes Tarzan and Buck Rogers debuted as newspaper comic strips, soon to be followed by other adventure strips like Dick Tracy, Flash Gordon, and The Phantom. Also in that year, the newspaper comic strip appeared for the first time in something resembling a pulp magazine format. Since the turn of the century, newspaper syndicates had periodically compiled hardcover collections of comic strip reprints for sale in bookstores. In 1929, Dell Publishing became the first to experiment with a weekly comics magazine distributed to newsstands. The tabloid-sized publication, called The Funnies, featured original comic strips, puzzles, and jokes. Dell canceled the series the next year, after 36 issues failed to sell very well. But this experiment inspired other entrepreneurs to explore the commercial potential of comics magazines. The Eastern Color Printing Company in Waterbury, Connecticut, handled the color printing for pulp magazine covers, newspaper syndicates, and Dell's The Funnies. In 1933, two sales employees at Eastern Color, Harry Wildenberg and Max Gaines, discovered that the standard 7 by 9-inch printing plates, used to print Sunday comic pages about twice that size, could also print two reduced comic pages side by side on a tabloid-sized page. When folded in half and bound together, these pages would fit into an economical 8 by 11-inch pulp magazine of color comics. Gaines and Wildenberg proposed that the company print such magazines for manufacturers who could use them as advertising premiums and giveaways. Eastern Color agreed to support the effort and printed 10,000 copies of Funnies on Parade for Procter & Gamble. After this venture succeeded, Eastern Color followed with larger print runs of two comic books featuring reprints of syndicated comic strips, like Mutt and Jeff and Joe Palooka, for Canada Dry, Kinney Shoes, and other youth-oriented manufacturers. In 1934, Eastern Color printed 500,000 copies of Skippy's own book of comics for Phillips Toothpaste, which gave them away to listeners of the Skippy radio show. Max Gaines suspected that comic books had market potential beyond these limited ventures. Though he was an aggressive and resourceful salesman, he had fallen into financial difficulties during the early 1930s and saw in the comic magazines an opportunity to lift his family out of the Depression. He persuaded Dell Publishing to finance Eastern Color's printing of 35,000 copies of Famous Funnies, Series 1, a 64-page collection of comic strip reprints distributed directly to chain stores for sale at 10 cents an issue. The issue sold out, but Dell remained cautious. Surveys of potential